Okay, we're on step number 6, and that's going to be once we've got all our panels glued together. We've already cut everything out, fit everything in here, glued them together. Remember, we only glued the rails and stiles, not the panel. Now we're going to be cutting these to the exact size. You made these a little bit bigger than what they need to be on purpose so we can trim them down. When you glued these together, some of these on the top edge maybe didn't fit together perfectly. One board, maybe your stile sticks up a little bit taller than your rail. Or perhaps there's a notch or a crack on one of the top parts here. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to actually trim the top. We're going to trim a little bit off the bottom. We're going to trim the left side and also the right side. We're just going to trim this all the way around just to square them up and clean them up. Okay? So the first thing we want to do, it says get your all your panels. And we're going to use the panel saw to trim 1/8 of an inch off the top edge of our 2 end panels. So all we're doing now, the top is up here, so you got the little feet down here. We want to make sure that our top is getting trimmed off just a little bit. About 1/8 of an inch is all. We're just going to take off maybe 1/8 of an inch off the top edge just to trim that off. Don't take off too much, just 1/8 of an inch is plenty. We're going to come over to the panel saw to do this, so head on over to the panel saw. Okay, we're just trimming off that 1/8 of an inch off the top. You guys have used the panel saw before, you know how to use it, but I just want to make sure that you're lining everything up right where it needs to be, where our blade's going to cut, just to have that hang pass just a little bit. And we want to make sure this is held real tight, or you can clamp it. I'm just going to hold it there as I cut it. But we're just taking off just a little bit off the top. Push those handles in real hard, turn that on all the way down, and trim a little bit off the top. You're doing that to both of your end panels. That way you can get a nice, clean, flat cut edge on the top of each of these. So I can do that same exact thing to my other end panel here, just a little bit off the top, about 1/8 of an inch or so. Hold that nice and tight. There we go. Okay. Next, we're going to go over to the table saw and trim the bottom. So come on over to the table saw. It says use the table saw to cut the height of your end panels to 13 inches, and it says place the top edge that you just cut against the fence. So this is nice and flat now. That can go against the fence. And we're going to trim these to 13 inches tall. And right now I'm about 13 1/4 or so. So it's only going to trim off just a little bit. And it's just going to make the height of these to 13. Get that fence set right at 13. And you'll notice it's only going to trim a little bit on the feet. And that's it. So it's just going to cut these off. So check your blade height here. We're good. 13 inches, that flat edge against the fence. No push stick because we're more than 6 inches. Get that to both of them. Same height, 13 inches. You got to be careful. These little pieces that get cut off, occasionally they're going to be hanging out right by the blade. Let that blade fully stop before you get those little pieces out of there, okay? Please don't reach in there and grab them while that blade's moving. So occasionally these just hang out right there. Okay, next, we're still at the table saw here. So after we've cut the height to 13 inches, next it says use the table saw to cut the width to 12 inches. And be sure to cut equal amounts off both edges. But right now I'm about 13 1/8 wide, and I need to get this thing down to 12 inches wide. But this is real important. You want to make sure you take equal amounts off both sides. So if I cut this right at 12 inches right now, one of these sides is going to be a lot smaller than the other. So we want to take about 1/2 inch off one side, about 1/2 inch off the other side to make it equal 12. So I've told you right on your blue paper, it says set the fence first to 12 1/2. Cut one edge. Then set the fence to 12 and cut the other edge. So we're just going to go 12 1/2. And again, make sure you're real accurate on your measurements here. 12 1/2, and I'm just going to cut one edge. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other one before I change the fence. Okay, now I'm going to set my fence to 12 inches. And I got to flip my board around so I can get the other edge cut. There's no sense in cutting the same edge again. So this one's already here. I want to make sure this one's get cut down to the same width here. So now I'm going this edge against the fence. I'm at 12. Same thing on this one. Make sure you put the one that you first cut against the fence. Now we should, thank you, we should have both these be exactly 13 inches tall, and they're both exactly 12 inches wide, and both sides are very similar as far as the width there. Okay, everything I just barely did, you're going to have to do the exact same thing with your front and back, because we've only done the ends right now. So it says now get your front and back, go to the panel saw, trim 1/8 of an inch off the top, cut them on the table saw to 13 inches tall. The only difference is that the width cut is different on here. Okay? So you're going to have to go back and do the same process I just showed you. Remember, for the width on these, it's different. And so look at your blue paper and see what it says for it. It says, use a table saw to cut the width of your front and back to 22 inches wide. Be sure to cut equal amounts off. First set the fence to 22 1/4, cut one edge, and then we'll set it to 22 and cut the other. So I'm going to go 22 1/4 for my first cut here. Cut both those, 22 1/4. Okay, and now our next one, I'm going to go 22. And make sure we flip it and get the other edge against, so we cut off the same amount off the other. Let's see, which one did I cut first? There we go. Okay. The last thing you're going to do to these is sand the thickness down. So we've got our heights and our widths all cut. So these should all be the exact same height. Ends are the same width and the front and back are the same width. The last thing it says to do is use the Time Saver sander to sand them down to 3/4 of an inch thick, 0.750. Okay, so when we're sanding on the Time Saver sander, remember, first thing we want to do is set this to however thick your board is. And some of these, when you glued them up, the boards didn't come together perfect, so you're going to have to find the thickest part of your board and set this to that thickness. Mine, I planed them down to 13/16 originally, and I'm measuring the different parts there, and we're pretty much 13/16 at the thickest part, but occasionally some of these got glued together a little thick, and I think we're okay at 13/16. But check your boards to see if you might need to go thicker than 13/16. But I'm at 13/16, so I'm going to get this turned on and set right to 13/16, 0.812. Hey, got it right on. If you need to fine tune things, remember down here at the bottom there's a little knob. You can turn that if you need to fine tune it. You want to go with the grain or across the grain when sanding? With the grain. With the grain, right? The problem is, on our panels here, okay, our grain's going this way on our stiles. Same thing on the panel, but our rails are going this way. So no matter how you send this thing through here, you're going to be going across the grain somewhere. Which means it's going to put some scratches across it. It'll still sand it, but it'll put some big scratches. So ideally we want to go with the grain, whatever the most grain is facing. So I'm going to send these things in this way so it goes with the grain here. It's going to cross scratch my rails, but that's okay. We can sand those with the grain later. You want to probably send every single one of these at the same time, and I find it's easiest to put your 2 small panels first and then have your 2 larger panels just follow right behind those, and they'll help push them through onto the other side here. Also, a good idea would be to have someone catch on the other side there so you don't drop them. We've spent all this time and work, it falls on the ground, it breaks, you're going to start over step 1. So get someone on the other side to catch for you. And we're going to go through all the way down to 0.750 for your final pass. So I'll start at 13/16, send them through. My next pass will be 0.802, then 0.792, 0.782, all the way down 0.750. Remember, we want to flip these each time as well so you get both faces sanded. Okay? Have that dust collection on when you send these through as well. If they ever get stuck, remember, get something behind it, push on it, send another board right behind it, and make sure they're getting caught on the other side. Okay? I think you guys are good on the time saver sander. You know how to use that. Once you get them all sanded, bring them over to me. I'll sign you off on your paper, and you'll be good to go. Okay? Thank you, guys.